Okay, today is the 19th of February and I'm just going to show you some of the normal chores that I'm doing on the nursery. So this afternoon I'm going to go through all these black pines. There's only a little selection of the black pines that we grow and sell. So I'm going to work on this, but before that I will just show you what we're up to. February is a very busy time of the year on the nursery because it's our main repotting season. So here we are, we don't just sit on our backsides doing nothing. And here's our colleague Tibor. He's mixing our standard bonsai compost mix. And look at that lovely mix. See, that's how we do it. It's got about 5 secret ingredients and it works well. So we're about to repot these junipers and we're mixing a special juniper mix. And over here you will see our colleague here, Steve, dealing with the maples. We're just going through all the maples. At this time of the year, we need to check all the trees to see which ones need repotting. It's the general tidy up. If the trees are not in good condition, we will repot them. And this is the busiest time of the year because it's mainly looking at the state of the root and doing the repotting. And if we move along here, these are the trees we repotted this morning. These are mainly maples that have been repotted into different pots so that they'll be ready for selling in the early spring and summer. And we have big trees. That is the juniper that I have just worked on. That took us more than 50 hours, I would say. Took me continuously about 5 days and nights in our living room and dining room, and it is almost finished, but I will show it as a separate video. And there are more trees to do. This is another old 200-year-old Japanese yew. I'm going to rewire this. So this just shows you the amount of work that we are going to have to do before the end of February. There's a lot of repotting to do of the maples. But let's look at some of these black pines. The black pine is a very easy and hardy species to grow in the temperate regions. In Japan, they are a very popular tree. In fact, I don't want to use these pejorative sexist terms, but the black pine is always portrayed in Japan as a manly tree. It's got the dominant male characteristic, all powerful. And the maples are meant to be soft and delicate, really beautiful trees which are more feminine. As I say, I don't like using this term because in today's environment this is supposed to be not politically correct, but nevertheless you know what I mean. So the black pine is manly stuff, and the manly look comes from having these strong, powerful needles. If you look at the Japanese white pine, which has much smaller, shorter needles, that is more feminine, if I can use that term. So what do we do with these black pines at this time of the year? Because throughout the year I work on black pines just to keep an eye on it and to develop them. So these black pines are grown from seed and they are developed in the Mediterranean countries, and we buy them as partly trained trees or just as young nursery trees. Some of them are not wired and not shaped, but some of them we do shape, and we improve on the trees all the time. So I will take you to every single tree and explain to you what we are about to do and what is the treatment that these black pines require. So let's begin by looking at this. So this is going to be a long video because how many black pines? I've got 3, 6, 9. So what strikes you when you look at a tree like that? That tree is quite bushy and hairy and it's got very long needles. So the first thing I do, I will take some of these long needles off. But then you must be wondering, why did I take it off earlier? I should have taken it off earlier. There's a very good reason for everything we do. The reason why we haven't taken these needles off earlier is because the needles or leaves are the food factories for the trees. Without the leaves and needles, it cannot feed in the tree, it cannot make the tree strong. So during the growing season last year, and in fact the last 2 years, we've let these needles grow because they produce the food and they help to thicken the trunk and feed back into the trunk. And that's how you get the nice thick trunks. This tree, if we look at it, it's got a lovely S shape, but it's got to the stage when I can start refining it. So I'm going to select the branches to wire, and then let us see where we go from there. So I will remove some of these needles and just leave a few tufts of needles at the ends. Controlling the growth of the foliage or needles controls the rate of growth of the tree and of course its development. So by removing some of these needles, I'm going to slow the rate of growth and I can then start refining it. So it's absolutely growing unchecked, but we are going to now check it back a bit. So the first thing I look at when I see this tree is which is the front and the back, because this has been decided for me. This is going to be the back, the more branches here, and the front because the tree is already leaning there. So it's partly trained already. So I've got one branch here, one branch there, and if we look through, I think I may have to prop it up a little bit because many of these trees keep growing and we have to change the angle of planting. This pine was put in this pot only a year ago, but black pines are extremely vigorous trees. Repotted again. Let's see what it's doing underneath. Look at that lovely mycelium. Look at that. Beautiful white mycelium. Healthy, strong growth of roots. And in fact, the roots have even filled the profile of the pot. You know, the little feet will fill the profile. So this is the state of the tree. I think I will have to pot it more like this so that I get a better view of the tree itself. Now, looking closely at this tree, you see that there are lots of small branches. This is what we call budding back. However hard you prune, you'll find lots of these new shoots will grow, and the same thing will happen on the branches. So I will just select a major branch and not bother about these tiny branchlets. Can you see this one? That's a tiny branch. I don't need that because I've got a big branch. That also I don't need. That also is a thin branch I won't need. So I just want to concentrate on the branches that I will finally use for designing the tree. So those are the nice first branches, as it were. Okay, let's wire these into position. I'm just going to prop it up a little bit because this is going to be the final angle of planting, slightly leaning, but it's still leaning towards the front anyway. So we will wire this branch first. Fortunately, there's a little back branch there, so I can use the two branch principle and link this and that. So you can pluck needles from the actual branch, and this may help some bud back in the summer. So I will link that other little branch. And then I'm just going to put an open coil like this to guide the branch along. This is not an exhibition tree, this is a tree in development, so it's okay to wire it loose like this. Okay, so the next one is going to be higher up. So the next one, we've got these two that can be linked together. And because this is longer than the leading shoot, I will reduce this a bit. It's quite okay to cut the tips of the shoots, because by cutting the tips of the shoots, you will encourage bud back further back into the branch. So don't be afraid to cut the tips off. A lot of people talk about pinching the candles and all that. That may be okay for certain types of pines, especially the Japanese white pine. But the black pine is such a vigorous pine. The black pine and the British Scots pine, Pinus sylvestris, are such tough trees that if you just at random take the leading shoot off like that, it will force bud back. So you don't have to wait for the candles to grow. Again, some so-called experts will slate me for it, but it works for me, and I'm not bothered about what people say is correct or not correct. Don't be worried about what people say. If you try experiments and it works for you, that is what matters. And that is how I generally approach my bonsai. I always say, as long as you don't do stupid things, it doesn't matter. This is all good horticultural practice. And because we all live in different climates, you've got to just adapt the growing conditions that are found in your particular part of the world, and then see if it works for you. Okay, when we come here, this is another decent branch. I'm not sure about this branch because it's coming straight at you. We always say that if a branch is going to poke you in the eye, then it's not right. You can get rid of it. And we were talking in some of my earlier YouTube videos about creating taper and making new leaders. Now you can see how the taper or the leader has been created in this particular case. See, that branch there was cut off, and we made a new leader go up this way, or the leader could go up that way. So we have a choice of both, you see. So we will decide a bit later. But that is how you do. You cut it off and then you grow a new shoot. Now, because this is also competing as the leader, we've got to decide, but I think I will use this as the leader. Okay, so now I'm going to wire the next pair of branches. So always remember, we're wiring branches in pairs. Okay. And we also grow branches because they help to thicken the trunk, but it needs to thicken the trunk in the right place. Because sometimes if you have too many branches growing in the wrong place, you will get inverse taper. Okay, so looking at that, I can wire perhaps these two branches. I will keep these because if I remove everything, it may become too bare. You see what I did last year? I cut over there, and because I cut there, there was a new bud break there, and there's a new bud break here. So it's done the job. So I'll just link this and that. Have a close look at that, and we will just wire these two. So I always feel a bit guilty for working so slow because I'm trying to talk and explain as I go along. Normally if I don't talk so much, I can work faster, but because this is a teaching video, I'm going to show you and explain to you everything I'm doing. Okay, so it's just to keep this branch growing downwards rather than springing up. All branches have a tendency to spring upwards because that's the nature of what branches do. So by putting the wire on, I'm going to force it to go flat pad like that. Okay, now we've got these two which are not wired, these two branches, so I can link these two together to wire them as a pair. So always remember, at the strain of being boring, we will always remind you that you should wire two branches together with one piece of wire. So that's the right length of wire. No bonsai can ever be complete, and this tree, I would say, on a scale of 1 to 10, it is, I would say, number 3 in the scale of styling. It's got another 7 stages to go before it becomes a nice looking bonsai. But as we say in bonsai, as in life, the journey is more important than just reaching the destination. So while we're training it and developing it, part of the fun of bonsai is seeing how they develop. So you can see how that shape is coming. Now that one is there. Now this is competing as a leader, so I will probably take this off, otherwise it becomes too dominant. I will take the whole thing off. Okay, I've taken all that off. This can become a branch going flat. And some of these long shoots, rather than wait for the candles to grow, I just take the tips off. And then pluck some of these needles. By plucking the needles, we're going to reduce the strength of the tree slightly, and also the next lot of needles will hopefully be shorter. The black pine has naturally long needles, but if you control the vigor of the tree, and as the tree gets older, the length of the needles gets much smaller. So I'm going to wire this to flatten it. There's quite a lot going on there. A lot of lay people who are not into bonsai often say, how can you charge so much for a tree? But if you were actually to cost the time that the bonsai artisan is spending to make a bonsai, you will soon realize that it's not that much money. Now, if I were to do this, spend like 1 or 2 hours on this tree, now I'm going to spend maybe at least 2 or 3 hours more during the rest of the year doing some more pruning. And if you add it over many years, you can see how many man hours goes into the making of a bonsai. So it is a very long and tedious process. It involves a lot of man hours, and this is what many people forget. Okay, so that's there. How can we find a wire, guide that along? So I just keep open coils. I'm not wiring it tight if I can help it. is just to guide the branch to go flat. Okay, we got up to there. And then we've got the tree growing there. Now we have a choice. If I make that the leader, the tree can grow back in that direction. So rather than make that the leader, it's got so many choices really. No, I can even do that. Or I may do that. I may do that. So let's see what happens. It's nice to have a choice of several leaders. See, this is where I cut it last year, and you see it's bud back over there. So by cutting it back, you get new shoots to grow. So I'm going to cut this, and hopefully you'll get new buds. See, like that was cut last year, and then you got all this growth coming. So it does work. So I can wire perhaps these together for now. Now that is too much there. I don't need that. I got more than enough. So I will wire these two. Pluck some of these needles off. The wire I'm using is 2 mil and 2.5 mil aluminium wire. I don't waste copper wire mainly on trees that are still in the process of being developed. Copper wire is usually used to refine finished specimens, although I personally find it difficult to handle copper wire, I must admit. This way, it's going to go this way. And these tips I can take off to encourage bud back. I'm going to do one more piece of wire to wire the leader to make it go in the correct direction. So I try as far as possible not to trap these needles. So, and just an open coil to guide that along. So that is how I would have approached the tree. So I'm going it in that direction to get the pads flat. So that is what I've done, and you can see what a lot of needles we've taken off. There's a lot we've taken off. All that's taken off from just one tiny tree. And then I will probably, I might as well repot it again, but I don't need to show you that because I've done a lot of that. So we take some of that off and pot it at a slightly different angle. So that's that one. Now let's look at this one. Now you must be wondering, why some of them are different color. Like this is a deep green and that is almost like yellow. There are two reasons for that. The deep green ones have been fertilized much later in the summer, and these were fertilized earlier in the summer, and also this has been exposed to the frost. So the frost has made it slightly yellow or brown, so it is what we call the frost blush. So the first thing we do with all these black pines is to remove all the old needles. It's usually a job that we do in October, but sometimes if you don't get around to doing all the trees, they will still remain and you still have to continue doing it. So before the growth starts again in the spring, you should tidy the tree up. So what I'm doing now is just tidying the tree up. Again, this, although it's a training tree, it's got a lovely shape already. So we will just refine it a little more. Many of these trees have been here for 3-4 years, so we keep improving the tree, improving the shape, adding a bit of wire here and there, and as they grow they will get better and better, but you can't get an instantaneous effect. It does take time. So I've cleaned it up. So cleaning problem is needed, but this shows the trunk line. See, the pads are forming very nicely. This is what you call a pad. You see, forming very nicely. But because we've been pruning, can you see all these shoots, young shoots? This is all the bud back that you get. So bud back comes from pruning, and the black pine, fortunately, is a tree that buds back very, very easily. I can't emphasize that enough. A strongly growing black pine is a real delight to work with. So that is very long. I'll cut that, so hopefully it'll bud back there. These shoots I can cut there, and it will bud back. Now, looking at this tree, this is obviously the front, because that doesn't look nice as a front, isn't it? So this is going to be a good front because it's more open. There are a lot of these branches. These we could use as sacrificial branches to thicken the trunk here. So although I'm tempted to take them off, see, I'm tempted to take it off, but if you keep it there, it will help the trunk to thicken at this point. So I'm not in a rush to take those off. So those I will bear in mind as a sacrificial branch or sacrificial branches. Now I've got to ask myself, although this is forming nice pads, it somehow is in the wrong position, because if I'm going to use this as the front, this is hiding the trunk. This makes a nice branch. This could make a nice branch. I could take it around here so that it doesn't interfere, but perhaps not, because I think it would be better coming off completely. So what I'll do is take it off completely, and now you can see the lovely trunk. See, now the trunk line is visible, the lovely S is visible. That can also be a sacrificial, so I'm not in a rush to take this off. So I can wire these two now. Let's see what happens when we wire these two. So just those two. I have 9 trees. I could easily take 2 or 3 hours to do it, but I'm not going to do you a 2 or 3 hour video. You would get absolutely bored stiff. I'm just going to run through each of these trees and show what needs doing to each of those. So remember, always 2 branches together. I think those of you who have more experience will do it naturally without thinking. But for those who are new to bonsai, it is absolutely essential to remember that principle. 2 branch principle. Okay, so that's flat. Now that one may bud back. I will keep it, it may bud back. So that will, see, now over here in this pad, this shoot is longer than that shoot. So because it's longer, I should really take it back and hope it will produce more bud back there. But this has done nothing, it might die, so I'll take that off. So you may get more bud back over there. I can wire those 2 together. I'm always looking for pairs to wire. So if I'm looking at that branch, I can wire these 2 together. Always pairs. So we will wire these 2. Flatten those 2. Now this is going to be the new leader there, so I can make the tree like this and let that grow upwards. So because I cut this leading shoot off, it produced all these side shoots, 1, 2, 3, 4 new side shoots. So I can take that back and take the growing tip out from there. Hopefully it would form more pads. So you must be asking, why don't I use that as the leader? I think it's going the wrong way. It would look better if I took that as the leader and brought this down here. So this is going to be redundant. So I don't need this. Neither do I need this. And over here, there's such a cluster of little buds, I can take these little ones off, because that can be a nice branch. That can come off. So we wire these two together. Bonsai is very interesting for me because it is analytical. You can actually analyze why you do certain things. There's always a reason for doing certain things. So what I've analyzed here is that I'm going to wire these two branches because I'm going to get a better trunk line with the tree going that way. Come down like that, and that's going to be the leader up. Meanwhile, I can wire these two together. I'll just do an open coil. I don't want to strangle it. So I went round the trunk to stabilize the wire. Open coil so it's not tight. Flatten it down. So that's the shape of the tree going that way. And I can wire this down to go this way, so I can wire these two together. So always looking at pairs. You see, every wiring operation is the two branch principle being applied. So now these two. So pulling the needles off, just leaving the tops of needles at the end. Taking this out, this open coil to flatten it. And I'll just leave it to go the rest of the summer. So that's going there. I'll let that grow a little bit because I can flatten it later on. Oh, I can't. No, I must not take it off. Let it bud back. It may bud back. It may bud back. So that is that tree done. So you can see the structure of that tree coming along. Okay, so that's the second one done. Now I was showing you this beautiful green one. So this had more fertilizer, so it was more green, and it was protected in the shade tunnel. So that's also helped to keep it more green. But they're all the same trees. So again, we have cut out the leading shoot to get a nice leading shoot. So that's going to be a nice leading shoot. So the first thing I always do is pull off the excess needles. So by doing this, we're going to reduce the vigor of the tree. So the tree is going to slow down a little bit by removing some of these needles. But the branches have been formed, so I'm not worried about that. Needles stay on the trees for usually between 2 and 3 years. Sometimes maybe more, but usually 2 to 3 years is the length of time the needles stay on. So now that's got a lovely trunk line there. I can give a little more trunk line by doing this. So let's take it to the top and see what happens. So without boring you too much, I will just show you part of the operation, because I really have to wire all these branches. These are going to be all wired flat, but I'm going to do a little curve here to give the S shape a little more to go. So the S won't terminate here, it's going to grow taller. So the final shape of the tree will be much higher up there. So we will link that with this. Again, although we're wiring the leader, I'm still hitching the wire to another branch. So in effect, the two branch principle is being worked this way. So I'm going to do this branch on the top. I hope it will hold, because it may not bend, but if it doesn't bend, I will probably put another coil of wire. I don't normally talk while I work on my own, but what I'm doing is expressing what I'm thinking as I go along. Many people laugh at people, like we have a very famous royalty, Prince Charles, and people accuse him of talking to his plants. Now, it may not be as funny as you think, because we all talk to plants. The way we talk to plants is that when we look at a tree, we say to ourselves, I wonder what that tree is doing. I wonder how it's growing, you know? So when we say things like that within our own minds, we are in effect talking to plants. So talking to plants is not such a crazy idea, you know? It is quite natural. Those of you who are gardeners will appreciate that talking to plants is really expressing your thoughts about how the tree is growing. So that is how I view this phenomenon of talking to plants. Now with this tree, there are a whole wall of branches. Let's count it, wall, W-H-O-R-L. It's an English word which is a bit difficult to pronounce, but the wall means it's like a spiral. Look at this, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 branches coming from the same point. Because when you look at the terminal buds, because sometimes on the terminal bud you get that happening. So these were the canals that we didn't cut off. So these 8 little shoots became 8 branches. Now clearly we don't need all of them, so we will choose the right branches to use. So we will space them out. So let me space them out like so. I've got 4 there. That one I take out. I can maybe keep 4 for now. Like that, 2 at the back, like that. We can always decide later on what to do with it. So So that S is going to be continued up that way. So it's got a lovely shape there. And I'm going to wire all these, but I'm not going to show you everything because it would take up far too much time. I'm just going to go through each tree and explain to you what I will do. Now, as you can see here, this tree was wired very roughly about maybe 2 years ago. And I use this clear aluminum wire. It's just rubbish wire that we have on the nursery. And we wired just to guide the branches along. They're not meant to be finished wiring by any means. So don't laugh at the wiring. It's just being done because it serves the purpose at the time. So these wires I'm taking off because the wires have done the job. It has made the branches grow in the right direction, or the direction that I wanted it to grow. So let us see. Now this one obviously hasn't grown so vigorously because I removed a lot of the needles earlier on. Look at it, producing cones already. Look at the beautiful cone there. So I can now continue wiring these, maybe wire it again, take that up as the leader. I haven't decided what would be the front. This could also be a possible front, and that could be a new leader. So we will possibly wire it again like this to emphasize the branches going down. So that's the final shape of the tree. If you wanted to make this the leader, you could also take that and chop that off, but I will perhaps take that up as the leader. So that is what the tree is going to grow into. Let's look at every single tree. Now that one again has got a beautiful contorted trunk, and I put one piece of wire just to flatten the branch at the back there. So what I would do, there are a lot of these new shoots that grew last year. They're much too long. Don't want it to grow that long, so I'll cut that back, cut the tips back. This can be a nice branch there, so I will wire that flat to wire this. Not much to do. Where there are bad stumps, I will take it off with a branch pruner. So that's going to grow like that. Again, this tree has several possible fronts. If I wanted to, I could make this the front and make it into a short tree by removing everything else. See, if I remove that, it'll be a short tree like that. Can you see? Up to here. This is the new leader. So I could have a short black pine going that way, or I could have a bigger tree making this the leader. So I have the options. So I've kept my options open. And because someone may buy this tree, I will leave them to make a decision as to what to use. So sometimes when you see a tree growing in this funny fashion, there's always a good reason why I do it, because I don't want to foreclose the options. So that would be left like that. Now this again is a much older tree, and you can see how thick the trunk is. The roots are not beautiful because unfortunately they were grown by the grower in a nursery, and the roots were round and round in a flower pot. I can try and improve it later on, but for the time being, as long as the tree is growing strongly, that is all that matters. And I'll show you what I will do. You see, look at that bunch of shoots there. One of those will be a nice leader. Talk of back budding, you see a lot of these tiny shoots from really old wood. So black pines bud back ever so easily. Now this tree, although it's planted like this, I think the front could be more like this. Could wire it this way. Now these you really don't need, but I can use these as sacrificials to thicken the trunk. So I will keep this, because this is not a finished tree, so I will keep these to help thicken the trunk. These I will also leave to see what happens. Now that was the shoot I cut, but you see the bud back over there. So there's not a lot to do to this one except wait for more growth to come. Maybe even clean the cut I made for making the new leader, get a better taper. Cut that further back. So this is going to be the front. Now this is going flat. I can always wire to make the pad like that. So I won't cut it off. I will just wire it in that position. As I said, I'm not going to do all the wiring because it will take too much time. It's just showing you what I will be doing. As it is, this video is going to be quite long, so that is the future direction of that tree. Now let's go through some more. Now again, this one we put some wires on about a year ago. We will have to take some off so we can go into that and have a look. So we'll just take the wires off and see what's happening. Because the wire was on only for a year, it hasn't marked it too badly, so I can safely remove it. Unless you deliberately want a gnarled trunk where you leave the wire permanently in the trunk, I prefer to take the wires off if I don't want the branches to be marked too badly. So we do certain things for certain reasons. So leaving the wire on permanently is not what I had in mind for this particular tree. So looking at this tree, let's explain what happened. The leader was cut there. Can you see all these cut marks? So there was a leading shoot cut there. So a branch was grown up as the leader. So we cut it there again, the leading shoot, so it grew up that way. So another branch was grown. So this is more or less using cut and grow method to get the shape of the tree. Although some wire was used, the main shaping has been done by cut and grow. So that is going to be the main shape, you see, over there. And because this is so vigorous, I'm going to reduce some of these. Hopefully it'll force bud back. All these long shoots, I will let that grow. So that's going to be a tree grown in that way. Now let's look at some more. There are just two more. Again, there's been some wiring on this tree, so I think I can take it off just to see if the branches have assumed the position that, yes, it has positioned it. If it springs up again after you've wired, that means you haven't left it on long enough. Then you have to just be patient and wait for it to have done its job and then remove the wires. But because this wire has done its job, I can take it off before it marks the tree too much. Black pines and Scots pines are such vigorous trees that if you leave the wire on for sometimes just over a year, they will start marking quite badly. And I've just started to notice that this one, can you see how badly the marks have appeared over here? But hopefully, when they grow out, it'll make it look gnarled. So not all is lost. So this tree, you flatten that, maybe take that off. So there are lots of branches to choose from. Some of these little ones, I don't want the trunk to swell so much, so I don't need these as sacrificials. So we take that off. These, there are maybe too many. I can keep it because I want the trunk to thicken over there. So I can leave them as a sacrificial. I should really take this out and repot it because the roots are rather ugly. So that is something I would do. I will take it out and try and improve the nebari or plant it deeper so that the surface roots are not so visible. Well, look at that one. That's quite ugly, you know. So I may have to look at it. In fact, I may do that as another video showing how to improve nebari. So I've just got one more and then this video is done. This is a rather strange tree because It hasn't got the twists and bends, and that was probably left deliberately so that it didn't all look the same. So this is a very straight looking tree. These little shoots and branches are left there really as sacrificials to thicken the trunk. So that's why it was left. But over here we are beginning to see the start of inverse taper. You can see that part is thicker than the rest of the trunk. And that was because there were too many branches there. So if you leave too many branches, you get this inverse taper phenomenon. So I will probably take this thick one off. I'll take one of them off. Maybe take this one off. And then cut into it. Hopefully I get rid of the inverse taper by doing that. We can thicken it there. Now, because we can still get a bend. So you can see if I use very thick wire, I can get a bend there. And then take it this way. So I get more trunk line, more interesting shape. So that's what I would do. So I hope I've taken you through the thought process of dealing with these pines. And before I end this video, I would just like to welcome you to intern we have. He's come here all the way from Thunder Bay in Canada. And here is Matthew.
Hello.
And he's come all the way from Thunder Bay to spend a week with us and to learn bonsai. So tell us what you've thought so far. You've been here only like 2 days, is it?
Yeah,
3 days, third day.
I came up on Monday morning, so I've been here for 3 full days, and it's been great. Yeah, like seeing the nursery and how everything works and what they do and how they treat the trees. It's been really good, especially repot. So it's really good. Yeah.
So you're interested in bonsai?
Yeah, very much.
Okay. And you have a lot of trees where you live?
Yeah. I have about maybe 10.
Oh, okay. But you're living in a forest area where the forestry is the main business in Thunder Bay.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. So you're familiar with pines?
Oh, yeah. Lots of pines, yeah. It's really good.
All right, Matthew, welcome, and I hope you enjoy your time here.
Yeah, thank you.
Now, while I was talking about the other trees, my colleague Tibor has very kindly mossed it up to hide the ugly roots. So that's one way of dealing with the roots. So look at it. It looks very artistic. So there you go. So the rate of growth will be slowed down and we will start having lovely nice pads. So this finishes very nicely this black pine video.